We got Matt Zenitz from On3 joining us, and I know that we're running up against the clock with him, so we will welcome him on to the show this morning. Then we'll get to our usual weekend shenanigans and all that kind of fun stuff. But Matt, it is a pleasure to chat with you, my friend.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, you have been the coaching news, I guess, breaking news guy for the past year or so now. You've broken a lot of interesting stories and obviously a lot with the Florida Gators this past offseason, as the Gators do replace 3 coaches on their coaching staff. But Matt, I guess I'm most interested in Austin Armstrong. The Gators bring back Billy Gonzalez. They promote internally at the tight end coach. But Austin Armstrong, 29 years old, formerly at Southern Miss, most recently at Alabama for about a month. But Matt, what are the streets saying about Austin Armstrong and him coming over to the University of Florida's defensive coordinator?
It's a wonder kid type figure. So have a good relationship with Will Hall, who's head coach at Southern Miss and somebody who's been a mentor type figure for Austin. Austin was obviously underneath him at Southern Miss and has a longstanding relationship with him. And Will's always spoken extremely, extremely highly of Austin. Obviously, one of the big questions with Austin at this point is the lack of experience at obviously this kind of level, not only from a coordinator perspective, but just overall being at this kind of place outside of the short stint at Alabama. But people, even outside of Will, that I know that have experience with Austin, that have relationships with him, all have a lot of confidence in him, what he brings to the table, his potential for moving forward. And for whatever it's worth, I know, or I'm sure there will be growing pains that come along to a certain degree with just this being the first opportunity like this at this kind of level. Like I said, for whatever it's worth, people whose opinion I trust have a lot of confidence in him for moving forward.
I think there was just like a little trepidation in Florida fans because you had the wonder kid, the rising star in Patrick Toney, and then your offense, your defense was one of the worst in the SEC. So then you kind of replace him with someone younger in that same thought process. So I think there's just a little hesitancy in Gator Nation when you bring in someone younger than Patrick Toney, who's also called a rising star. And you're like, all right, cool. Does that mean our defense is going to be a sinking star again in 23?
Yeah. All I know, Billy Napier is somebody who I have a lot of respect for in terms of his ability to identify not only talent from a player perspective, but from a coaching standpoint also. And this was a deal with Patrick Toney that had been in the works for a couple of weeks or so, leading up to him ultimately leaving, where even before Jonathan Gannon got the job out there in Arizona, this was something that, from what I've heard, had been verbalized to Patrick Toney that could be a possibility with Jonathan Gannon, and that if it came together like it looked like it may, that there would definitely be interest there in getting him on board. There was a couple of week process leading up to this ultimately being finalized, where Jonathan Gannon eventually got the job. They started to get more real, had to work through the buyout portion of it with Patrick Toney, because if I remember correctly, his buyout was somewhere in the range of $380,000 or $400,000 or something like that. And NFL teams, as you guys know, don't feel like messing with buyouts, especially significant ones. But throughout the course of that process, Billy Napier was aware of just this being a possibility. So it gave him time to give thought to just who could make sense as a potential replacement if this did come together with Patrick Toney and the Cardinals. So this wasn't just like a spur of the moment type deal with Austin. This was something where Billy had time to think about this. And through that period of figuring out the best course of action, determined that Austin was the person who would be the best fit for Florida and for that DC spot for moving forward.
Matt, want to ask, and I know that you mentioned it. I know you said that Billy Napier's reputation is strong, and you've obviously been around the game for, seen him, get from that rising star to ultimately the culmination of him being now the Florida Gators head coach. What is his reputation as not just an identifier of coaching talent, but his ability to? I know he's good at closing on the recruiting trail with recruits, but with coaches as well.
Yeah, has a very strong reputation. Obviously, when you take over a program, that there are always going to be hate to use the term growing pains again, but there's always going to be a process just getting things to where you want them to be. That was the case for Nick Saban at Alabama, where look back at 2007, it wasn't exactly the same kind of level of year that Alabama has had since that point. But whether it's Nick Saban, Billy Napier, or whoever, that there's always going to be a process that comes along with taking over a program and getting it set up structurally to where you want it to be. And that's something that obviously has been going on there during the course of the last year and now heading into year two. And obviously, and not to throw out anything super obvious, but obviously a very important year two now for Billy Napier and that staff.
Matt, my last question is, I know, Florida Gators lost 3 coaches to the NFL this season. I think there was 18 or 19 college coaches that moved on to the NFL this season. What do you kind of pontificate is the future of the college coaching profession? Are we going to start to see a lot more of those coaches trying to make that jump up? Do we feel like this year was a little bit of an anomaly? And then where do you see coaches coming from? Do you see a lot more high school coaches making that move up, or do you see the FCS or the D2 level over to the FBS level a little bit more frequently? Kind of what's your prognostication there?
I think you'll see a combination of different things. So you see this kind of stuff every year with college coaches making the move to the NFL, just like you see NFL coaches making the move to the college level. And obviously with some of the responsibilities that college coaches have at this point that have been added to the responsibilities that were already there even before the last couple of years, it leads to an even greater interest level for at least some guys to make that move to the NFL level. That said, there are only so many NFL opportunities. Right. And I think that even though there are a good amount of coaches that have aspirations of moving to the NFL level, that there are a decent amount of guys, even at the NFL space currently, that still have interest in the college level, because like with anything in life, that there are pros and cons to each side. And without boring you with details of NFL salary structure and all of that kind of stuff, even from a financial standpoint, you can, depending on the spot and position and all of that, make more at the college level sometimes than at the NFL level. And the financial part of it sometimes can be a decent driving factor for people in life, including coaches, when making decisions. But for whatever it's worth, had a conversation with an NFL assistant coach today who was inquiring about something college-wise that's open right now that would have interest in. So like I said, I think you'll see a combination of those different things. College guys interested in making the move to the NFL level, obviously, but at the same time, still a lot of interest in guys either remaining and working up at the college or in the college space, or people currently at the NFL level who are interested in the college part of it. One other interesting thing to go along with that. So I've been expecting for a while, and I'm not sure what your guys' expectation was on this deal, but I've been expecting for a while the structure of coaching staffs to change heading into this season, where maybe it could take more of turn into more of an NFL model, or what was proposed also was being able to expand the size of staffs and countable coaches during the week for practice, even though those guys wouldn't be able to coach during games. And it was initially supposed to pass that rule in January, ended up getting tabled at that point where it didn't go through, but there was still an expectation around the coaching world that it was going to be in place before the season started. And actually have now heard during the course of the last couple of days that the rule is probably not going to pass, or really barring some surprise is not going to pass before this season, which is even more interesting just because I know there have been multiple teams even during the course of the last few weeks who had been making hires based on the expectation that this rule was going to go into effect. So that was something else interesting coaching-wise that had come up during the course of the last couple of days, including this morning.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the NCAA will have compliance officers at every practice around the country to make sure that guys who aren't supposed to be coaching aren't doing that at practice. But it's interesting because, the NFL is not going to take bad coaches. Like you said, there's only a certain number of jobs. So to me, and obviously rival fans of Florida will troll and say Billy Napier is losing control of the program. It's like, listen, to go to the pinnacle of coaching is not, bad for a program. It means you've identified talent. I think until college football reins in the calendar now, a lot of coaches will say, hey, I like at Friday going home and not being on the phone with 16-year-old kids telling them, please come to my school. I like to hang out with my wife or see my kids. And I think just the quality of life aspect, if you have a chance to go to the NFL, probably a higher quality of life, even if the paychecks are a little bit smaller. So I think the NCAA, which, like you just mentioned, enjoys kicking the can and delaying decisions on important stuff. I think until that gets settled, you might see more coaches who have the opportunity to go, or some of these guys in support staff roles. Florida had a coach go down to the high school level. Hey, you can make 6 figures coaching high school football in the state of Georgia and not have to worry about recruiting. You just maybe coach a class or teach a class twice a day and then coach football. So I think that's something different too. It is interesting though, Matt. Just wanted to get a little bit on your background. Where'd you go and where'd you come from? All of a sudden we just started seeing, Z-bombs on the timeline and you breaking news.
So originally from Maryland, spent the first 28 years of my life in Maryland, covered combination of the Baltimore Ravens at the NFL level there and University of Maryland football. And then after the 2014 football season, covering combination of University of Maryland football and basketball, had opportunity to come up with AL.com at that point, covering Alabama. Made the great move from Baltimore, Maryland to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to what I was expecting at that point to be like the epitome of my cousin Vinny land.
Well, similar metropolitans, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and the tri-state area up there.
Yeah. And actually, like my first breakfast experience in Tuscaloosa shortly after getting there, Waysider, place that was right down the street from my initial apartment complex. It was confirmed even more at that point that I was moving to my cousin Vinny land.
Right. Instant grits.
Unfortunately, it didn't end up being to that kind of degree. But shifting back to actual stuff that you guys care about or asked about. So went to AL.com 2015, covered Alabama football there, and then role progressed to covering the SEC as a whole. Did that through the early part of 2021, and then opportunity came up at On3 and have been here for going on 2 years now.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, you are a gem to follow, and obviously lots of Z-bombs as Nick calls them, or the woes or the shams of college football, breaking news, and obviously broke a number of stories for the Florida Gators this year. And I know that you're running tight on time, Matt. So why don't you let all of the listeners know where that they can follow you, and we certainly appreciate your time.
Yeah, I obviously can find everything on 3 website, and then on Twitter, Zenitz, MZENITZ.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for your time this morning. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Appreciate you guys.
Awesome.